As I'm sure many of you are aware by now, Ubisoft recently released the trailer for Far Cry 5, and it looks interesting to say the least. It's being developed by most of the people who worked on Far Cry 3 and 4, and apparently Far Cry 5's got all of the same sort of chaotic first-person open-world gameplay mechanics you'd come to expect from the series. But this time, instead of taking place in some remote location, the setting is none other than modern-day Montana. More specifically, the game takes place in a fictional region of Montana called Hope County, which is run by a religious madman called Joseph Seed, aka the Father, who under the guise of Christianity commands a formidable army and cult called the Project at Eden's Gate. You, the player, are a sheriff's junior deputy in the police force and are caught in the middle of a conflict between the cult and the resistance. Interesting to note is that for the first time, Far Cry will offer some semblance of character customization. You can choose your sex and your skin color. I wouldn't expect an extensive RPG-style character customization where you can modify every aspect of the face or anything like that. My assumption is that you're going to essentially choose from a number of presets. As your character, it'll be your job to build up a resistance against Joseph Seed's cult via the game's recruitment system. While exact details on how this recruitment system works wasn't given, the promise is that you'll be able to find people and bring them with you to attack the world from 360 degrees. Also, like in past Far Cry games, there will be a handful of NPCs who you'll be visiting quite often for quests and whatnot. In this case, the three main ones are a pastor named Jerome, a bartender named Mary May, and a pilot named Nick Rye. They are apparently meant to represent examples of everyday Americans who are living under the thumb of the militia who you can tap to help fight back. As for the religious militia cult, apparently they're meant to represent people who hijack religion in our real world and use the guise of religion to commit horrible acts. Extremists, as we know them. As for the politics behind it all, with the game being set in America and dealing with extreme actions from different factions, Far Cry 5's producer was actually asked directly from one of the media outlets whether the game's present-day setting means that Trump is president in the game, or if it's in any way meant to represent America's current political climate. As far as Trump goes, the reply was basically no, and that it would be too easy to reference specific people in the real world and to have references and jokes about all that. However, the producer didn't deny that the game is meant to convey some of the feelings of our modern society, like the feeling of an impending collapse or calamity. With all that's happened in America over the last year and a half, the producer felt as though America was ready for a Far Cry. Now, he emphasized that the game isn't setting out to teach something specific about politics. Instead, the game aims to stand on its own and have players experience the perspective of someone who is echoing the sentiment that the world right now is a little bit off. The game also aims to have multiple characters with their own point of views and have these views clash in such a way that the question of who is right isn't quite clear-cut. So yeah, Far Cry 5 is tackling some pretty relevant and heavy themes with this one. Now, while the game's reveal and trailer were overall generally well received, some of the themes portrayed in the trailer did spark some anger among certain groups of people. There are some out there who are essentially calling this game anti-American, racist against white people, and saying that it aims to tarnish American values and ideals and whatnot. Let me start off by saying that I have no problem with an individual having some semblance of a reaction to an artwork. After all, that's what art does. It's supposed to evoke certain human emotions, positive, negative, or anything in between. However, what I cannot get behind is when people cry controversy where it really doesn't exist. There are even a handful of major media outlets who are touting the content in Far Cry 5's trailer as controversial, and I just don't get it. It's like it's suddenly being implied that we haven't played games in which we murder, torture, and maim people from all ethnic and religious backgrounds. I get that with the current political climate in America, tensions are running a little high as of late, but I think it's important to settle down and separate fantasy from reality. Just because we enjoy killing characters in a virtual world doesn't necessarily mean that the same sentiment applies to real life. Doesn't mean all of a sudden we are all having murderous intent. That's because when we play video games, we are well aware that none of it's real. It's all just sort of systems upon systems that act and react to each other, being output into a visual form that our minds can interpret. So when I run over a crowd of people with my car in Grand Theft Auto 5, the enjoyment I get out of that isn't because I actually derive pleasure in murdering people and in being able to get away with it. The pleasure mainly comes from me witnessing all of these systems working together and reacting to each other to create these insane, cool, and often hilarious effects. It's the equivalent of making a baking soda and vinegar volcano. You mix a bunch of things, you see these things react to each other, and then you get to witness something cool happen. And in the same manner that we know that the baking soda and vinegar volcano isn't actually a real volcano that's gonna cause actual mass destruction, we know that the things that are happening in a video game aren't real. We know that this is kind of a playground, a toy, and we just want to make cool shit happen in this harmless world, so we go out of our way to do just that in a virtual environment. In the same fashion, it is important to understand that Far Cry 5 isn't some kind of intentionally made simulation for killing white men or whatever the sentiment is. It's a video game. It's pure fantasy. It is systems upon systems given visual context. I'm sure I'll be murdering tons of Christian white characters in Far Cry 5, but that doesn't mean it applies in any way to my real-life ideals, not by a long shot. Consequently, I don't believe that what we're seeing in Far Cry 5 on the surface level is fully representative of the message that the developers are trying to deliver with this game. Just saying that this game is about killing white Christian people and that it's very anti-American and whatnot is, I think, a vast oversimplification and misinterpretation. Now, don't get me wrong, Far Cry 5 does clearly draw real-life elements from our real-world America. Religious cults, militias, and extremists do exist in America. They are very relevant and prominent to our modern-day society. But for any American who's actually offended by, I guess, the barbaric way that America is being showcased in Far Cry 5's trailer, let me ask you this. Are you part of a religious cult that oppresses an entire county and goes around killing people willy-nilly? If you answered no, and I hope all of you answered no, then what reason is there to be offended? These violent characters portrayed in Far Cry 5 literally in no way, shape, or form represent you. Even if you are a combination of Christian, American, and white, like the characters portrayed in Far Cry 5, that is a huge spectrum. A Christian, white, American person, that encompasses a vast array of people. And like with any group of people, whether that's separated by race or religion or what have you, there's always going to be good people and there's going to be bad people. And as one of the developers said, Far Cry 5 represents a very specific group of people who hijack religion and use the guise of things like Christianity to justify their horrible actions. These types of people do exist in real life, but they're probably not you, so again, there's really no reason to get offended. It's all dramatized anyway. Even the extremist groups of people that are going to be portrayed in Far Cry 5 are going to be greatly exaggerated. Why? Because that's just how fiction works. They are focused on entertaining more than accurate depictions of events. And like all other fiction, Far Cry 5 has never advertised itself to be an accurate portrayal of whatever source material they're drawing from. Yes, the game does take place in America. It does draw some real-life elements of America, but it's all represented through a heightened reality to tell a story, to emphasize certain themes, and to deliver a certain flavor of gameplay, but again, none of it is actually real. So look, by all means, have whatever human reaction you're gonna have to Far Cry 5. That's just something that can't be helped as us humans. We're gonna react to things differently based on who we are. But to say that this game is controversial, to use that word, seems to me rather hypocritical. If you've been able to get by playing video games like the Grand Theft Auto series, or hell, any Rockstar game for that matter, games like Red Dead Redemption, Bully, what have you, I'm sure you'll be just fine with Far Cry 5. I've seen way worse shit. I think in one of the Call of Duty games, was it Modern Warfare 2? I saw like Washington, D.C. get utterly annihilated. That doesn't mean that the developers had an agenda to encourage terrorism against America's capital. It's art. It's all it is. It is art. Far Cry 5 is honestly not doing anything insane that many other games in the past haven't done already. Maybe it's just the timing. Maybe it's the fact that Far Cry 5 was announced in our current political climate that is instigating such unprecedented reactions. And that's fully understandable, but I also think that on some level, it's unwarranted. That's just me though, it's one man's opinion. I'd love to civilly discuss with you your opinions on the matter. Be sure to respectfully let us know in the comments below your point of view. Do you agree or disagree with what I have to say? Also, if you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon so we can maintain this channel without having to rely on third-party sponsorship and annoying corporate interference. And to be further updated on more video game news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.